Thanks for joining the second part of our event series, where we'll be talking about integrating with Zapier today. Last week, you would have been in there with Christine, where she taught you about the event basics in Member365. So kind of building off of that, once you've got a basic event, how do you integrate with Zapier so you'll be able to automate registrations between Member365 and Zoom or other webinar hosting platforms, and also automate the attendance from Zoom to Member365 so you can capture all that information in one place. My name is Joel. I'm a customer success coach with Member365. So you're probably used to Christine running these webinars. Some of the coaches will be taking over some of that. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you on a weekly basis. And I'm all about seeing potential and making it a reality. So if you have any questions as we're going through this webinar, just put them in the Q&A and I'll be doing my best to answer them as we go along. But if I don't see them till the end, then we have lots of time at the end to be able to go through those questions. And you're all muted, so you will have to use the Q&A, like I said, but I will do my best to try and kind of follow along with that as we're going through here. And just to take a look at what we're going to be covering today, as you can see, there is a lot, but rest assured, we will get through this in a quick amount of time, probably even under the 30 minutes we have allotted, but we've got a full hour for questions at the end as well. So we'll have lots of time to figure out how to set up a Zapier account, create the initial Zap, the configuration of the registration Zap, and then testing that Zap and setting up the attendance Zap. Then we'll look at some other stuff that we've got in Member365, kind of some support tools to help you with all that. And again, leave some time for questions at the end. So we'll just start in Member365 here, reminding us how to look at the event that we've got set up. So if we go to events and then manage events, we can find the event that we've got set up for this webinar. So I've called it Zapier webinar. And then the other thing you want to have set up is your event within Zoom. So in Zoom, if you go to webinars, you can see an event named the exact same. And I recommend doing it this way just to keep it easy to see between the two events. You know, those are the ones you're connecting. And within Zoom, you want to make sure that you've got registration set as required right here. This is going to allow the Zap to be set up. So just make sure you've got that checked off. Make sure your time is the same between Member365 and Zoom, because if they, register in Member365 and then go to log on in Zoom and it's a different time, that's just going to be confusing for your registrants. So without further ado, we will jump into Zapier here. So like I said, Zapier is a tool that can connect different apps so that you can automate processes between apps. So today we'll be looking at Member365 and Zoom. And we'll start with the creation of the registration app. And you'll notice in the top corner here, it's got some initials. If you're not logged into Zapier yet, or you haven't set up an account, you'll just need to set up the account and then you'll see the initials in the corner. That means that you're logged in and you're ready to go. And the first thing you're going to do is click on this create button, because we're going to create a Zap, and that will bring you to this page. So within Zapier, you've got these things called Zaps or workflows, where you've got a trigger and then some actions that trigger causes. So like I said earlier, we're going to cover the registrations app first. So we'll look at the trigger. And sorry, I'm just seeing a question here. Yes, yeah, I'll be sending out a recording after. Thank you for asking that. I forgot to mention that. The recording will be posted to our YouTube channel. So just like all of our webinars, if you missed this one or you need to review anything, that'll be on the channel. All right, so looking at the trigger, the first app we want to set up is if someone registers in Member365, pass that registration information to Zoom. So the trigger we're going to set up is in Member365. So click on that trigger and then find Member365. And it looks like it's just taking a minute here. There we go. And now we can see that we've got Member365 chosen as the app. The next thing we're going to want to do is select what account with Member365 we are connecting with. So if you've got any set up already, then they will show up here. If you need to connect a new account, then you click on that, and it's going to get you to put in your Member365 information. And the easiest way to find that information, oops, sorry. I just got to drag some stuff around here. There we go. Is right now I'm looking at joel.member365.com. And if I go into my account and profile, I'll be able to find the email address that I need to use as well as the password. So it's actually your Member365 information that you are using. So I'm just going to copy that and drag it into that sign in page where it's asking me to put in my email address and password. I could just copy paste it there. I know what mine is. So I will just type that in. And then for the domain, you're going to grab the domain from the Member365 page. And you only need up to the .com or .org or .ca, whatever your domain is. So anything that comes after that, we can just get rid of. And then this is going to sign us in. If you don't have you don't have Zapier configured with Member365 yet, then it's going to take you to this page where you're going to request access. If you've already done this, it'll take you to a page that just confirms that you want to sign in. So if you need to request it, then obviously you just put in this information and then our team will connect with you. I'm going to go back to Zapier and use the Webinar 365 account that we're using for this demonstration. So just once that pops up, and I'll be able to continue here. Looks like Zapier is taking a little bit of time and it might be loading, just not showing it. So we'll pick the trigger event, which is going to be the event registration with an assigned ticket. There are some other triggers that you can use for others apps, but for the purposes here, we'll use this one. And then we will continue. And it looks like it's just taking a minute. And I'm wondering if that's because it's not recognizing that we are logged in to that webinar account yet. Give that a second here. If it doesn't load, then I may try to refresh here and just quickly do this step again. See if we have better luck here. There we go. All right. Another thing you'll want to do is name this app something that you will remember. So webinar registration, maybe your particular event, webinar registration, whatever, it's going to be easy for you to remember down the line. All right, so now that we've got our trigger selected and the account set up, we'll hit continue. Then we're going to choose the event that we're connecting. So in this case, it's going to be that Zapier webinar that we looked at the beginning. And then we can hit continue and test the trigger. So this is just making sure that it's able to pull that information, and it looks like it did that all good. So now we can continue with selected record or click on action. They're both going to take us to the same step, which is finding Zoom. And then we go to the action event in Zoom. So when someone registers in Member365, what do we want to happen in Zoom? We want to, and I always miss this one, create a webinar registrant. We'll select the Zoom account and then continue. And now we need to choose the webinar within Zoom. So again, that same name, Zapier webinar, makes it easy when you've got them named the same. And now we're going to map what information is being passed. So we click on this plus button, and the email is going to be the email from Member365. The first name is going to be the first name from Member365. Do we want to send a confirmation email? Always a good idea to do that. And then the last name and organization also from Member365. Then we hit continue and test this step. And we've got both green check marks, so we know that it's working. So now whenever anyone registers for the Member365 webinar, they're going to automatically be registered in the Zoom. So we just hit publish, and that's the final step. And now we want to set up a Zap so that when someone logs into the Zoom webinar, that their attendance is automatically marked within Member365. And this just saves the manual effort of passing that information manually. So if we go back to the home page and create a new Zap, brought back to this page where we're setting up the Zap. So the trigger is going to be within Zoom this time when someone logs into an event. So when we have a new participant join the webinar or meeting, and make sure again we're connecting that account from Zoom. Got to select that we want it to be a webinar, and this is just going to bring up the list of webinars, again finding that Zapier webinar, and then we want to test it to make sure that it's able to pull that information. All right, and we got the green check mark there, so we can continue a selected record, or this time I will select the action within Member365. And the action event is that we want to mark attendance. So you'll do that and make sure we're connecting that Member365 account again. And now that's all set up, we can map the email address from Zoom to Member365, continue and test this step. And got the green check marks. So we can publish this. And now you're automatically going to have it that when someone registers in Member365, it's going to Zoom. And then when they log into Zoom, that attendance is being passed to Member365. Now, one good thing to do is test this step manually. So if we go into Member365 and into the member portal, we could impersonate someone if we want to, or we can register as ourselves. Either way is going to be good for testing purposes. We'll go to events and my event calendar, pick that Zapier webinar, and just go through the registration process as you normally would. I gotta pick a ticket. And because I've got it set up that it's limited to the ticket purchaser, I know that this ticket is going to be assigned to me. So it's going to pass my information over to Zoom. Continue to the final step. Just going to be the payment page, but since there is no payment, I'm not going to have to enter any payment information. And so now I have successfully registered. So now I want to go into, and sorry, I should show I'm registered as Stephen Jones. So now if I go into the webinar and find that Zapier webinar in Zoom, and go to the invitations tab, you can see there are two registrants. So one's going to be the test that Zapier did, and one is going to be the test that I did. So just to make sure, we've got that's the Zapier person, and then this is the one that I just tested. So we know that's set up properly. And then you can do the same, of course, going from Zoom into Member365. Just go over some best practices here and then see if there's any questions. So like we just did, manually test the integration. Of course, Zapier is testing it as we go, and that's good. That's, that kind of first line of defense to make sure it's working, but it's always good to manually test it before you kind of expect it to work for your registrants. Keep it simple. So Zapier can make some quite complex zaps. You're able to do multi-step zaps. You're able to have one trigger do multiple actions, all that kind of stuff. But until you're comfortable and familiar with Zapier, it's best just to have a single trigger, a single action, and kind of build the complexity as you understand Zapier more. Make sure you're clearly labeling your zaps. So you've got your, registrants app, you've got your attendees app, and making sure that they're labeled for that specific event, that kind of thing. It keeps things easy and make sure that you're able to find that zap down the line in the future if you need to. And then aligning your dates across platforms. That was something we talked about at the beginning, just making sure that your event in Member365 and Zoom have the same date and time, and in an ideal world, the same name, just so your registrants aren't confused at all when they're registering through Member365 and ending up in Zoom. And it makes it easier for you to find things as well. That's it from me, though. So we'll take some time for any questions that came up. Is Zapier free? Yeah, great question. So there is a free tier, and I'm, not from the Zapier team, so I don't want to speak too much about the pricing model, but basically if you're having single step zaps and under a certain amount of zaps per month, then you're able to stay in that free tier. And then they do have paid plans that allow you to have more zaps and more complex zaps. Any more questions here? I'll leave a minute or two just in case anyone's typing or thinking. Got a couple more. Okay, why would we want to use this instead of just the regular registration? So with the registering automatically in Zoom through Member365, it's going to pass that information to Zoom again automatically and keep track of that information within Member365. Same with the attendance. So rather than needing to export your list of attendees in Zoom and passing it to Member365, that's just automatically going to happen. And then you can trigger all your automatic workflows in Member365 based on that marked as attendance, whether that's, a continued education unit or a certificate or something like that. So it just takes away some of that manual work. Do I find it easy? Overall, yeah. I mean, it did take a little bit to kind of wrap my head around what the zaps were, but once you understand that basically you need an action a trigger and an action, then it's quite easy to use. And there is some built-in AI as well. So if I just jump back to Zapier here and go to the home page, I can kind of tell it what I want to happen. So when someone registers for events in Member365, register in Zoom webinar. And of course, with any AI, you're going to get some answers that aren't too great, but often with the simple zaps, it is going to give you the steps that you need. So we've got that exact that we just set up. But of course, we are still going to need to map the specific event and the email and all that kind of stuff. So there is that tool to kind of make it a little bit easier, but there is still some manual work there as well that you'll need to make sure that you're doing. All right, when registering for an event, that once the attendant confirmation will be sent to Member365, does this mark attendant? If so, do they need to log in with the same details? Yeah, so they are going to have to log in with the same information, but that's part of why this automation process is so neat, because they're logging into Member365 to get that registration sent to Zoom with that Member365 information. And then because registration is required, like we had set up at the beginning of that Zoom event, they can only log in with that email. So if they try to log in with another email, it's not going to let them into the webinar. So they log in with that same email, and then it's going to be passed over to Member365 where they're marked as attended. Does the first app send out a Zoom meeting invite? Yeah, that was what we're seeing with the registration email that we saw. So I'm just going to get to that page so we can see it again. There was kind of a question that said, do you want it to send out an email or not? And where was it? I must be missing it. But yeah, that's the point of this automation is if you want it to be sending out that email, then it will do so. After you set up the Zap, does it send out invites through Zoom, or do you still have to send out the Zoom invite? I think that was the same as the last question. Can you allow a co-host in Zoom with using a single Member365 account? Luke, can you elaborate on that question? Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you mean. Chuck, great question. Right now, it's as soon as the ticket is assigned to that person. So they don't have the ability to only if the ticket is marked as paid. That being said, that is, a multi-step Zap that we could look at creating. Right now in Member365, let's see if I can pull it up here. There's limited triggers and actions, but we are kind of building it out and looking for feedback for what people are looking for. So that's a good note to make. Let's see. So within our help desk, we have a Zapier specific section now, so we can see the actions in Member365 are marking attendance, and the triggers are event registration with assigned ticket. And then some other ones, if we needed an event registration with a paid for ticket, then that would be a slightly different configuration. Multiple users to share screen. So Luke, the way I'm interpreting your question, it sounds like you're asking about a co-hosted event where this is, multiple registrants. So are you asking if someone could register through Member365 and become a host? Is that the question? Once attendance is marked in Member365. Michelle, to some degree, it's going to be sent as soon as they're marked as attended and the event is over. If you wanted to send them out at a different time, it would be a little bit more of a manual process. And this is something that more of the advanced event configuration part 3 next week, Carlo will go over. Yeah, Luke, I'm looking at, so you want to assign breakout rooms or have someone register and be a host. I would have to look at the Zoom actions. So if we go to Zapier, we'll take a look at Zoom. And then we want the actions, create a registrant. It doesn't look like you're going to be able to create a host from a registration. The hosting you would likely have to do manually, or once you're in the webinar in Zoom, so they could register this way, but then you can assign panelist abilities through Zoom itself. It's going to be any assigned ticket in the event right now. Yeah, that's the way it's configured. It's not a specific event. So this is, for a simple event where you have one ticket to register for the webinar. And Chuck, if you have more questions about like specific use cases or what you'd like to see built out to make it fit kind of how things are set up for you now, then feel free to book a call with our team one-on-one, and we can definitely talk about what is possible to build out there. And that goes for everyone, of course. Michelle, great question. It's going to be if they log into the event. If we look at the Zoom triggers, it's when they join the webinar or meeting. I'm not sure how Zoom works in terms of, if they attend or if they're logged in for 90% of the webinar, can we create a trigger that way? I know that Zoom does collect those stats, but I haven't seen any triggers based on it yet. But like us, most organizations are kind of building out what you can do with Zapier to make it more and more tailorable. But I would say right now, it's just as soon as they join, they're marked as attended. I would keep an eye out for what else you can do with Zoom down the line. Yeah, just finishing your question there. Yeah, so basically, if they log in, they're going to be marked as attended. You can always go in and manually mark them not as attended if, they left early, or at the end, your Zoom report says they were only there for 2 minutes or whatever. You're able to go in and mark them not as attended, but this is going to automate that attendance workflow. And just to go over one last kind of tip in case there's any questions, this will give us a little time. When you're creating the ticket, I mentioned that you want it to be limited to the purchaser. That's going to be the easiest way to do it. If you want someone to be able to purchase multiple tickets, then just make sure you have force ticket assignment selected. So if they purchase 5 tickets, they have to assign them to the 5 people, and then those 5 people will automatically be registered to Zoom as well. All right, I think that is it for questions. I'll leave 1 more minute in case anyone has anything last minute here. Otherwise, thanks everyone for joining today. And I hope you learned a little bit about the automations that are possible with Zapier. That's a good question. So the question, does force ticket assignment prevent the same name on all of the tickets? I would have to test that to be sure. I don't want to give an answer that's wrong here. My intuition is that you're able to assign it to the same person, but I'll follow up with you, Chuck, and after I do a test. All right. Well, if anyone has any outstanding questions, feel free to submit a ticket or get in touch with us, and we'll try to answer you that way as well. Thanks again for joining. I really enjoyed walking you through this, and I look forward to connecting with you all in the future.